The handcuffs clamped down on Brigadier General Simone Carter's wrists with a cold finality that silenced the crowd. Her Pentagon call still echoed faintly from the cracked phone on the pavement. "General Carter, do you copy?" But the officers didn't care. In that moment, they weren't arresting a war hero, they were erasing her humanity in front of an audience that didn't know who she really was, yet. It was supposed to be a simple drive. Nothing fancy, no flashing lights, no motorcade, just Brigadier General Simone Carter behind the wheel of a rented black SUV, windows cracked to fight the Louisiana heat, GPS set for Red River Command Post. She'd made this run more times than she could count, quiet, solo, under the radar. That was how Simone liked it. No distractions. No assumptions. Just the road and the mission. At 45, Simone had commanded combat units, overseen disaster response in 3 continents, and briefed 2 sitting presidents. But out here, on a rural highway slicing through the pine-swathed outskirts of Ridgeway, Louisiana, none of that mattered. Not the ribbons on her dress blues, not the stars on her shoulder, not even the classified briefing she was preparing to deliver. All that mattered, in that moment, was 1 bar of signal, or lack thereof. The secure Pentagon line was fading fast. She glanced at her screen, 2 bars, then 1, then gone. She needed to reconnect immediately. It wasn't a casual call, it was mission-critical, real-time logistics for troop movements overseas. Not the kind of thing you reschedule. She scanned the road ahead. Just up the bend, nestled between 2 rusting grain silos, she spotted a peeling red sign, "Red's Pit Stop." It looked forgotten by time, uneven pavement, cracked ice coolers, faded beer ads fluttering on the windows, but it had what she needed, elevation and, hopefully, a signal. She pulled into the far end of the lot, away from the handful of locals lounging outside. Pickup trucks sat idling. An old man in overalls nursed a can of soda. 2 teenagers leaned against a dented Chevy, laughing too loud. Simone didn't give them a second glance. She had bigger concerns. She grabbed her secure device from the passenger seat, stepped out, and walked a few paces until she felt the faint buzz of connection return. A single green bar blinked to life. She raised the phone, pressed her thumb to authenticate, and spoke in a low, deliberate voice. "Brigadier General Simone Carter. Identity confirmed. Commence secure briefing." The voice on the other end responded instantly. She turned her body slightly to shield the device, eyes scanning the lot in that habitually trained way, all angles, all exits, all threats catalogued without thinking. It was instinct now. The voice on the call laid out classified directives, Simone listening carefully, lips tight, absorbing every detail. She didn't notice the cashier watching from the window. Inside the station, Martha Lundy narrowed her eyes. 62 years old, retired substitute teacher, permanent frown lines, and a personal history of seeing trouble where it wasn't. To Martha, Simone wasn't a seasoned military leader or a woman deep in a classified operation. She was a stranger. A black woman in a ball cap, standing too close to the gas pumps, talking low into a phone that looked too advanced. Simone's posture was too focused. Her expression too serious. And in Martha's mind, that could only mean one thing: drugs. Or worse. Martha picked up the beige landline on the counter and dialed the Ridgeway Police Department. She kept her voice low, glancing at the other customers to make sure no one heard. "Yeah, hey, it's Martha at Red's. We got a suspicious individual outside. Black female. Early 40s, wearing a cap, acting real strange by the pumps. You better come check it out. Could be drugs. Or terrorism. I don't know." She hung up before they asked follow-up questions. She dusted her hands like the whole thing was handled. Across town, 2 deputies were lounging near the AC vent at Ridgeway PD. Deputy Ross Hanley, a thick-necked man with mirrored sunglasses perched on his head, rolled his eyes as the call came through. His partner, Deputy Kyle Travers, barely out of the academy, perked up at the mention of suspicious woman. Ridgeway wasn't exactly a hotbed of action. They hadn't made a felony arrest in over a month. Hanley stood, cracking his knuckles. Let's go break up the excitement. The cruiser screeched into the lot 12 minutes later, gravel spitting under the tires. Simone turned toward the noise, phone still raised to her ear. Her contact was in the middle of detailing urgent movement orders when she saw the flashing lights. She blinked once, frowned. This didn't feel like coincidence. She lowered the phone slightly and faced the approaching deputies, keeping her stance calm, hands visible. Hanley jumped out first, hand already grazing the grip of his holstered Glock. Travers followed, one hand on his belt, the other flicking his sunglasses down. "Ma'am," Hanley barked, "step away from the vehicle. Now." Simone raised an eyebrow, lowering the phone slowly. "Officers," she said, voice steady, "I'm on an active call with the Pentagon. I'm Brigadier General Simone Carter. I can show you credentials." Hanley stepped closer. "License and registration. No sudden moves." Simone nodded once. She reached slowly for her back pocket. "I understand. I'm military personnel. On official business. My ID and orders are here." She held out her military credentials and secure federal travel documents. Hanley snatched them, barely glanced, then tossed them onto the hood. "Fake," he muttered. Simone's brow furrowed. "Excuse me?" Travers snorted. "Lady, you expect us to believe you're some kind of general? Out here? Talking into a space phone in a parking lot?" He laughed like it was the biggest joke he'd heard all year. "I'm authorized to be here," Simone said evenly. "You're making a mistake. Please radio your supervisor." But Hanley wasn't interested in protocol. He pulled the cuffs from his belt, voice sharp. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." Simone didn't move. Not yet. Not until she made it perfectly clear. "This is unlawful detainment. You have my ID. My orders." "Don't care," Hanley spat. "Turn around." When she didn't respond fast enough, Travers grabbed her left arm. Hanley forced her right wrist back. The cuffs locked with a loud snap, biting into the skin. Her secure phone clattered from her hand onto the concrete, still connected, still active. The voice on the other end shouted, "General Carter? General Carter, do you copy?" But neither deputy noticed. Or cared. Simone clenched her jaw. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but from the visceral heat of humiliation. Her face stayed blank. She had faced worse than this, but that didn't dull the sting. A few bystanders had gathered now. Locals in cargo shorts, tank tops, trucker caps. Some recording. Most grinning like they'd stumbled onto free entertainment. Hanley shoved her against the side of her SUV. "Got her," he called out, as if bagging a trophy. Simone stared at her cracked phone, screen flickering, Pentagon lines still open but broken by static. She didn't say a word. Not because she had nothing to say, but because she understood the power of silence when the world was watching. And somewhere out there, she knew, someone was watching. Back in Washington, at a secure monitoring station, a red blinking light flared on a console. Major Edwin Reeves leaned forward. "Line to General Carter just went dead," he said, frowning. "That's not supposed to happen." He didn't wait. He pinged her GPS. 1 dot. Stationary. Not at the base. Not even near it. Just a tiny blip on the map labeled Ridgeway. His eyes narrowed. "Get Red River on the line," he ordered. "We may have a problem." Back in Washington, D.C., nearly 1,000 miles from the cracked concrete of Red's pit stop, red warning lights flared to life on a secure console deep within the Pentagon Cyber Command Center. Major Edwin Reeves, a seasoned cybersecurity analyst with a decade of crisis monitoring under his belt, stared at the screen with narrowed eyes. The secure channel labeled BG Carter, Red River Link, had gone dead mid-briefing. No sign-off, no disconnect request. Just a sharp burst of static and then silence. Reeves leaned forward, tapped a few keys, and brought up the live encryption logs. Still nothing. The connection hadn't ended, it had been severed. That never happened. Not with a line this critical. "Trace her," he said to the junior tech seated beside him. "Now." Within seconds, a blinking dot reappeared on the massive digital map of the southeastern U.S., not anywhere near Red River Command Post, but about 65 miles southwest, in Ridgeway. A town most of the Pentagon floor had never even heard of. Reeves straightened. "What the hell is she doing in Ridgeway?" The junior analyst looked over, confused. "That's not a secure zone." "No," Reeves muttered, "it's not." He reached for the direct line to Red River Command Post. "This is Major Reeves at Pentagon Cyber Command. I have a possible breach. Brigadier General Simone Carter's line has gone dead. She is stationary in Ridgeway, Louisiana. Secure asset, repeat, secure federal asset, potentially compromised. Confirm and deploy." The response from Red River was instant. Within 4 minutes, a rapid response convoy was rolling out from the eastern gate of the base, 5 unmarked black SUVs, full tactical team on board, lights dark, tires slicing through gravel and heat waves as they barreled north. Leading them was Lieutenant Colonel Brianna Holt, 44 years old, Army Intelligence, known across the division for her no-nonsense command style and steel-trap memory. She had worked with Simone Carter before, knew her record, knew her integrity, knew she didn't just drop off the map without damn good reason. She also knew what a delay in response could cost. Meanwhile, back in Ridgeway, the scene outside Red's pit stop had turned disturbingly casual. Deputy Henley leaned against the hood of Simone's rental SUV like he was on a coffee break, flipping through her federal travel orders with a smug smirk. Deputy Travers paced in small circles, throwing glances at Simone, who sat quietly on the curb, her wrists cuffed behind her back, shoulders pressed against the graffiti-tagged station wall. A faint trickle of blood ran from a shallow abrasion near her right wrist where the metal had cut skin. She hadn't spoken since they cuffed her. Not because she didn't have words, but because none of them would matter here. Her secure phone lay cracked on the ground, screen dark now, microphone still embedded and blinking faintly as if clinging to life. Her call to the Pentagon had ended in chaos, shouting, static, and a final, distant voice screaming her name. The crowd had grown. Maybe 15 people now, some standing near the trucks, others lingering just outside the gas station's rusted awning. Most were recording on their phones. A few laughed. No one intervened. Inside the store, Martha Lundy stood behind the counter sipping sweet tea, satisfied. Her arms folded like she'd just chased off a stray dog. "Thought she could play us," she muttered under her breath. "Not in Ridgeway." But then the radio on Hanley's shoulder crackled to life, cutting through the heat like a siren. "Unit 4, be advised. Subject in custody is flagged federal. Repeat, flagged federal. Pentagon has initiated priority trace. Orders are to release immediately and await further instruction." The color drained from Hanley's face. He looked up slowly, glancing at Travers, whose cocky grin had vanished. "Say again?" Hanley said into the mic, voice cracking. "Did you say Pentagon?" "Affirmative," came the dispatcher's reply. "Repeat, subject is Brigadier General Simone Carter. Stand down immediately." Simone didn't move. Didn't blink. She simply stared ahead, her silence louder than any words. Hanley fumbled with his belt for the handcuff key, swearing under his breath as he struggled to fit it into the lock. "Ma'am. I didn't realize," he didn't finish. "Couldn't." The cuffs finally came loose. Simone rolled her shoulders back as she stood, flexing her wrists without looking at either of them. Travers mumbled something that might have been an apology, but it was swallowed by the rumble of approaching engines. A second later, the black SUVs from Red River whipped into the lot like thunder, tires skidding to a halt in near-perfect formation. The doors flew open in unison, and a dozen military officers moved out with speed and precision, no weapons drawn, but every step loaded with urgency. At the center of the formation strode Lieutenant Colonel Holt. Her boots hit the pavement with purpose. Her gaze locked immediately on Simone, and in 2 strides she was at her side. "General Carter, are you injured?" she asked firmly. "Minor abrasion," Simone replied. The real damage was to their judgment. Holt gave a tight nod. Then she turned to Hanley and Travers. "You are hereby ordered to cease all contact with this federal officer. You are under review for obstruction and potential civil rights violations." Hanley opened his mouth, but Holt shut him down with a single look. "You had full documentation in your hands. You ignored it. You escalated without cause." She turned to Travers. "And you," her voice sharpened, "you laid hands on a decorated military officer mid-briefing to the Pentagon. That will follow you the rest of your career. If there is one." Neither man said a word. The crowd had gone deathly silent now. Even Martha was ducking behind the counter, suddenly camera-shy. Simone was quietly escorted into the central SUV, where a medic immediately began tending to her wrist. Outside, Holt issued formal warnings to both officers, recorded by body cam and 2 military observers. The convoy didn't linger. Within minutes, the SUVs reversed and peeled out of the lot, leaving behind a cloud of dust, 2 shaken deputies, and a town that had no idea what was about to hit it. But someone else did. A teenage girl near the gas pump, still holding her phone, had live-streamed everything, from the moment Simone was cuffed to the second the military arrived. It was already uploaded. Already gaining traction. The caption read, "Cops arrest black woman making a call. Turns out she's a U.S. Army general." By the time Simone's SUV cleared the Ridgeway limits, the video had been shared 2,000 times. 10 minutes later, it hit Twitter's trending feed. An hour later, national news networks picked it up. And by dawn the next day, Brigadier General Simone Carter's name would be on the lips of millions. But inside the SUV, Simone didn't check her phone. She didn't speak. She sat quietly, her posture straight, her eyes locked on the road. Holt sat across from her, silent for a moment, then spoke gently. "Washington's spinning up a full investigation. DOJ, Civil Rights Division, even a White House liaison." Simone didn't react. Only said, "They should have known better." Holt nodded slowly. "They're about to find out what happens when the country sees who you really are." The convoy sped on, passing mile markers and open fields, a caravan of consequence carving its way toward accountability. And Simone, steady, focused, and unshaken, was already preparing for what came next. Because this wasn't just about Ridgeway. It wasn't just about her. It was about what it meant to be seen, and what it meant to finally be heard. By the time the black SUV carrying Brigadier General Simone Carter pulled through the reinforced gates of Red River Command Post, the video had already been viewed over 700,000 times. Grainy cell phone footage of 2 Ridgeway deputies manhandling a calm, handcuffed black woman, one who identified herself repeatedly as a U.S. Army general, had struck a nerve across the country. Simone hadn't watched it. She didn't need to. She had lived every second of it, from the cold snap of handcuffs against her skin to the sickly heat of the parking lot as strangers gawked and murmured. Inside the vehicle, the secure atmosphere was thick with urgency. Colonel Brianna Holt updated Simone with clipped sentences. Multiple Pentagon departments were already involved, the White House had been briefed, and the Department of Justice had launched an independent investigation into the Ridgeway Police Department. "It's going public," Holt added quietly. "There's no stopping it now." Simone didn't reply. Her gaze remained out the tinted window, locked on the swaying pine trees and telephone poles that lined the base's perimeter. When the vehicle came to a stop outside the strategy wing, Simone stepped out slowly, her back straight, movements measured. A young staff sergeant reached for her door, but she waved him off. "I'm fine," she said. Her voice was steady, unshaken, but there was a weight behind it, the kind forged in the aftermath of humiliation. Inside Red River's Situation Room, a war room usually reserved for tactical briefings and intelligence assessments, the air was electric. Officers, aides, and legal advisors lined the walls. Screens displayed headlines from every major outlet, Decorated Army general wrongfully arrested in Louisiana. Pentagon launches investigation after shocking footage goes viral. I was judged. General Carter breaks her silence. Simone walked past them all and took her seat at the head of the table. She was in command now, not of a battalion, but of the narrative. And the stakes were just as high. Over the next 48 hours, the story erupted into a national firestorm. News anchors shook their heads in disbelief. Civil rights leaders called it a textbook case of racial profiling. Military veterans, black, white, and everything in between, took to social media to express outrage. This isn't just about her rank, one retired Marine wrote. It's about the fact that a black woman can give her life to this country and still be treated like she doesn't belong. Even conservative outlets, often hesitant to wade into racial issues, covered the story with a tone of stunned concern. And when Simone's full military record was made public, combat tours, command citations, humanitarian operations, the public reaction grew even sharper. She had risked her life for the freedoms of others, only to be treated like a criminal in a parking lot while serving her country in real time. The Ridgeway Police Department, blindsided by the backlash, scrambled to respond. Sheriff Lewis Hargrove, a man more comfortable behind a fishing rod than a press podium, stood awkwardly before a wall of microphones, sweat staining the collar of his beige uniform. "We regret the events that transpired," he muttered, eyes darting. "There was a misunderstanding. The officers involved have been placed on administrative leave pending review." But reporters weren't satisfied. "Why didn't your officers recognize federal identification?" one shouted. "Was race a factor in their decision to detain her?" another pressed. Hargrove stammered, offered no clear answers, and was escorted out within minutes. The damage was irreversible. As the story snowballed, the internet became a battleground of emotion and reflection. Hashtags like #Justice for Simone, #She Earned That Star, and #Uniform or Not trended for days. Marches began in cities from Atlanta to Seattle, many led by black veterans holding up photos of Simone in uniform, signs reading, "I could be her" and "Respect has no color." In interviews, Simone remained reserved, never once raising her voice or vilifying the town of Ridgeway. "This is not about vengeance," she told a Pentagon correspondent. "It's about accountability." Still, the question everyone asked remained, would she speak publicly? Would she confront the nation, not as a victim, but as a leader? The answer came Saturday afternoon. A press conference was scheduled for noon outside Red River's main gate. Media crews arrived early, cameras stacked 3 deep behind barricades. The sky above was cloudless, brutally hot, but the crowd outside swelled regardless: veterans, students, clergy, activists. Many wore army green. Some brought flowers. Others held signs that simply read, "Thank you, General Carter." When the double doors finally opened, a hush fell. Simone emerged in full dress uniform, the deep navy blue sharp against her skin, medals perfectly aligned, cap tucked under her arm. She walked with quiet authority, flanked by Colonel Holt and 2 Pentagon aides, her every step echoing on the concrete. At the podium, she didn't adjust the mic. She didn't clear her throat. She just began. "My name is Brigadier General Simone Carter. I have served this nation for 26 years. I have led men and women into war zones. I have negotiated peace across borders. I have buried friends and stood with families whose children didn't come home. And on Thursday, in Ridgeway, Louisiana, none of that mattered." She paused. The cameras clicked, the crowd leaned in. "I was not misidentified. I was not a case of mistaken identity. I was judged. Judged by the color of my skin. Judged by my gender. Judged by my clothes. Judged by assumptions that have no place in the land I've fought to protect." Behind her, Colonel Holt remained stone-faced, arms crossed. Reporters scribbled furiously. But Simone wasn't speaking to them. She was speaking to everyone who had ever been dismissed, silenced, overlooked. "This is not just my story," she continued. "This is the story of every black woman who's been questioned when she speaks with authority. Every soldier who's been saluted in uniform but watched in suspicion the moment they take it off. Every American who's ever had to explain that their ID is real. That their dignity isn't conditional. Her voice didn't rise, but it filled the air like thunder. I am not here today for apologies. I am here because silence is not an option. Because what happened in Ridgeway cannot be swept aside. Because justice is not an abstract idea, it is a standard. And it must apply to everyone. Uniform or not. A single cheer broke through the crowd. Then another. Then the applause swelled until it was no longer polite, it was personal. People clapped not just for Simone, but for what she stood for. For the courage she represented. For the change she demanded. Simone ended with no slogan, no campaign. Just the truth. Dignity is not earned by medals. It is owed by humanity. And I will not rest until this country understands that. She stepped away from the mic, nodding once to the crowd, then turned and walked back through the gate with the same calm resolve she'd shown from the beginning. Not triumphant. Not broken. Just resolute. The applause followed her all the way inside. Later that night, her speech aired in full on every major network. Clips of it flooded feeds and inboxes. But it wasn't the words that stuck, it was the look in her eyes. Clear. Unapologetic. Unshakable. General Simone Carter had refused to shrink. And in doing so, she made the nation look at itself a little harder, a little deeper. Maybe even a little better. And across the country, young girls watched her walk away from that podium. Some in ROTC jackets. Some in hoodies. All of them holding on to a new truth, that quiet strength speaks volumes. That justice, no matter how late, still matters. And that one voice, calm and unwavering, really can change everything. As the author of Brigadier General Simone Carter's story, I want to thank you, our listeners and viewers, for walking this emotional and necessary journey with us. The Ridgeway incident is more than a tale of injustice, it is a mirror reflecting a harsh truth that too many still live with every day, that dignity, no matter how rightfully earned, can be stripped away in an instant by prejudice. And yet, in the face of humiliation and disregard, General Carter chose not vengeance, not outrage, but truth. Calm, clear, and commanding truth. What happened to her wasn't an isolated incident. It echoed the quiet injustices that unfold in parking lots, offices, classrooms, and neighborhoods across this country, moments where a person is seen not for who they are, but for what others assume them to be. Simone Carter didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her restraint, her dignity, and her refusal to be erased did more than any outburst ever could. It shook a nation awake. Her voice became a rallying cry not just for justice, but for identity, for respect, and for accountability. So what's the lesson? It's this: do not let anyone define your worth by your appearance, your background, or your uniform. You carry the value of your experience, your principles, and your truth. And when that truth is challenged, speak. Not always to prove something, but to refuse silence. Because silence has never healed injustice. To our viewers, especially those who felt the sting of being doubted, dismissed, or diminished, know this: you are not invisible. Your presence matters. Your story matters. And there are millions who will stand with you when you rise. Here at U.S. Justice Story, we are committed to telling these stories not just to spark outrage, but to ignite reflection, to inspire courage, and to remind every viewer that the fight for justice is not finished. In fact, it's just begun. If Simone Carter's story moved you, if it stirred something in your heart, share it. Start conversations. Speak up when you witness wrong. And most importantly, never underestimate the quiet power of one steady voice refusing to be ignored. Thank you for being part of this journey. Your attention, your empathy, and your willingness to listen is how change begins.